Hello and welcome to DD India. I'm Akshay Dongre and you're watching our special program Voice of the Global South, a show that brings to you stories, news, achievements and concerns of a rising aspirational world. So let us begin with today's episode. India witnessed a historic moment as Narendra Modi took over the office of Prime Minister of India for a historic third term. The oath-taking ceremony, which took place at Rashtrapati Bhavan or the Presidential Palace in New Delhi, saw several foreign leaders from the Global South in attendance. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also shared his vision of taking forward the views and challenges of the Global South at the world stage during his third term.
Sunday marked a significant day in India's democratic history. Narendra Modi was sworn in for his third consecutive term as Prime Minister of India to form a government at the centre for 3 terms in a row. The oath-taking ceremony was administered by President Draupadi Murmu at the forecourt of Rashtrapati Bhavan in New Delhi. With over 9,000 guests in attendance, the event underscored the importance of this historic occasion.
मैं नरेंद्र दामोदर दास मोदी ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूं कि मैं विधि द्वारा स्थापित भारत के संविधान के प्रति सच्ची श्रद्धा और निष्ठा रखूंगा। मैं भारत की प्रभुता और अखंडता अक्षुण्ण रखूंगा।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's unprecedented third term is a testament to his enduring popularity and the trust placed in him by the Indian electorate. The grand oath-taking ceremony was attended by a number of foreign dignitaries as part of India's Neighbourhood First policy. Distinguished guests included Nepali Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal, Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, Maldives President Mohammad Muizzu, Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe, Mauritius Prime Minister Pravin Jugnauth and Vice President of Seychelles Ahmed Afif. When PM Modi took his first oath in 2014, international dignitaries including all SAARC members attended the ceremony, and then in the year 2019, the invitations extended to BIMSTEC nations, Mauritius and Kyrgyzstan, with 8 foreign leaders present. This tradition continues, underscoring India's neighbourhood first policy and the importance of regional cooperation and goodwill. The presence of these dignitaries at the ceremony underscores the importance of maintaining and strengthening relationships with neighbouring countries. Meanwhile, PM Modi, while attending a banquet at President's house with several other international guests, reiterated India's commitment to regional peace, progress and prosperity. He also emphasized India's role in amplifying the voice of the Global South in the international arena, a crucial aspect of his foreign policy. Looking ahead, Prime Minister Modi attended the G7 summit for the third consecutive year, which is being held in Italy. At this prestigious global forum, he will continue to advocate for the interests of the Global South, reinforcing India's position as a key player on the world stage.
India has been invited as an outreach country. The visit assumes a significance as this will be Honorable Prime Minister's first overseas travel after assuming office in his third consecutive term. It will also afford him an opportunity to engage with other world leaders present at the G7 summit on issues of importance to India as also to the Global South.
In recent years, India has emerged as a stable, major democracy with the fastest growing economy. In a position to amplify the voice of the Global South in facing emerging challenges such as climate change, radicalism, political instability, economic turmoil and wars, and to bind the nations towards a common purpose into an era of development, prosperity and peace.
Haiti, one of the wealthiest countries in the Caribbean, is now enduring one of the world's most severe human rights crises ever. Over half of its population lives in poverty and the country is besieged by unprecedented violence and instability. The recent resignation of Prime Minister Ariel Henry due to armed blockades has exacerbated the crisis, with Gary Conille now stepping in as the new Prime Minister of the country. And as Haiti endures this unprecedented crisis, it's important to recognize the broader impact of Western interference in the nations of the global South and the crisis that it may cause.
Haiti, once the wealthiest colony in the Americas, is now the Western Hemisphere's poorest country, with more than half of its population living below the World Bank's poverty line. The Caribbean nation is grappling with unprecedented levels of violence, leading the United Nations to declare it as one of the countries of greatest concern.
The situation in Haiti is cataclysmic. Corruption, impunity, and poor governance, compounded by increasing levels of gang violence, have eroded the rule of law and brought state institutions close to collapse. Tackling insecurity must be a top priority to protect the population and to prevent further human suffering. Gangs continued to use sexual violence to brutalize, punish, and control people. Some women are forced into exploitative sexual relations with gang members. In addition, the rape of kidnapped hostages continues to be used to coerce families into paying ransoms. All these practices are outrageous and must stop at once. It is shocking that despite the horrific situation on the ground, arms keep still pouring in. I appeal for a more effective implementation of the arms embargo. I reiterate the need for an urgent deployment of a multinational security support mission to help the national police to stop violence.
In 2024, Haiti's situation has deteriorated dramatically. Killings and sexual violence, education under fire, children under crisis, Haitians are facing one of the world's worst human rights crises in decades. But why is this country bearing so much brunt? It traces back to September 2019, when massive protests erupted demanding the resignation of the then President Jovenel Moïse, who later in 2021 was assassinated, which left a power vacuum in the country's government, leaving the armed gangs with more political demands. Gangs launched coordinated attacks in the capital Port-au-Prince, killing police officers and causing chaos through prison breaks and airport seizures. For decades, Haiti's gangs have been closely associated with politicians, political parties, businessmen in the country. Post Moïse's killing, Ariel Henry took charge as the Prime Minister, who was never directly elected but was chosen for the post and came to power with the backing of the Western countries. Throughout its history, Haiti has endured a series of external interventions that have eroded its sovereignty and directly led to the current crisis. This and other foreign involvement has further deteriorated the country's situation. Henry had to step down as Prime Minister last month after arms group blocked his return to the country, leading to the swearing-in of a transitional council. Gary Conille has officially been sworn in as Haiti's new Prime Minister.
We asked the Haitian National Police and the military to take responsibility and arrest Ari once again. The population is not our enemy. The armed groups are not your enemy, but you arrest Ariel Henry for the country's liberation.
Amidst this gang violence and zero power control, there is an evident spillage in the rural areas, disrupting food, water and gas supplies. Over 362,000 Haitians have been displaced, many forced to live in precarious makeshift camps, only to flee again as violence reaches them. The humanitarian response is severely hampered, with organizations struggling to reach the most vulnerable due to the pervasive insecurity. From political instability to humanitarian catastrophe, there is deep-rooted corruption and fragile governance. Coordinated attacks have resulted in severe human rights violation, crippling healthcare system and displacing thousands. Nearly 1.4 million Haitians are on the brink of famine. Urgent international support and comprehensive policies are imperative to restore order and security. As Haiti battles through the unprecedented crisis, one cannot ignore the broader implications of the West's influence on the global South. The history of exploitation, political interference, and economic manipulation has left countries like Haiti vulnerable to instability and suffering. It's a stark reminder to the need for solidarity and genuine partnership, where the voices and needs of the marginalized are prioritized over geopolitical interests. Only through collective action and a commitment to justice can we hope to build a world where every nation, regardless of its wealth or power, can thrive in peace and dignity.
Rising radicalism and terrorism in Africa has become one of the biggest threats to peace in the African continent. In a recent case, more than 80 people were killed in attacks by suspected Islamist rebels in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The incidents of violence by the Allied Democratic Forces are reported in several villages of the North Kivu province of the country. In recent years, the African continent has come increasingly under attacks by terrorist groups that are now exploiting political and financial instability in many African countries.
In a recent incident in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, more than 80 people have been killed. Members of the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, attacked the villages of Masala, Mapasana and Mahini. The attackers, armed with guns and machetes, assaulted the residents of the villages in the Beni territory.
The assailants arrived in the village during the day. They came from the bush where they started killing people before arriving here at the center. When they arrived at the hospital where we were, we heard the crackling of bullets, and that's how we fled.
Intensified attacks by the ADF aligned with the Islamic State has further destabilized the area. The forces are behind multiple attacks that have killed 17 in the village of Masavu, 5 in the villages of Kabveli and Namulesi, and 6 in Munuzi. The total number of victims has risen to 82. People attacked by these rebels fled their homes to take refuge in neighborhoods in the western part of the city of Beni. Hospital of the nearby region was packed with patients, including the injured. The attack was followed by a foot patrol by members of armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo, urging villagers to remain in their homes. The government needs to further take urgent action on the killings and find a political solution by accelerating efforts. Amidst the political instability sweeping across Africa, the Islamic State terrorist group continues to be a significant threat. Its expanding operations also endanger the conflict zones of Southeast Asia, further escalating regional tensions and insecurity. The impact of regional terrorism in South Asia has been the highest globally. Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East and North Africa and South Asia account for 94% of deaths from terrorism in 2023. With just under 4,000 deaths by terrorism in the Sahel in the year 2023, which is 47 of the total deaths by terrorism, the epicenter of terrorism is now the Central Sahel region of Sub-Saharan Africa. As per key findings from the Global Terrorism Index 2024 report, underlining the strong link between conflict and terrorism, over 90% of terrorist attacks and 98% of terrorism deaths in 2023 occurred in the conflict zones. Deaths from terrorism in Africa have skyrocketed. In the past 7 years, Sub-Saharan Africa has recorded the most deaths from terrorism. In 2023, Africa witnessed an average of 8 terror-related incidents, with 7,000 civilians and 4,000 military personnel killed in attacks. It is to be noted that casualties from militant Islamist violence in Africa rose by 20% last year. There are inadequate resources in the region of Africa, with limited food, water and healthcare services, making survival difficult for the residing population. There is an urgent need for international response towards the people living in misery. Organized crime, armed rebellion, unconstitutional changes of government, illegal maritime activities and environmental crisis are driving insecurity in the region. The world needs to extend support to the impacted zones to bring stability and strengthen the global South nations of Africa.
We will take a small break here and be back with more Global South stories on the other side. Keep watching.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights and authentic information.
Welcome back, you're watching DD India and this is Voice of the Global South. Let's move on to our next stories from the Global South. Have you ever wondered about the ancient African, Indian, Southeast Asian and even Chinese artifacts and antiques in the lavish Western museums? It's a well-known fact by now that majority of them are looted treasures. But now there are increasing calls and demands that these treasures that represent not only culture but also the history of their homes be returned to their rightful owners. Oxford University has recently agreed to return a 500-year-old bronze idol stolen from a Tamil Nadu temple to India after a formal request from the Indian government. Back in the colonial era, European countries not only seized control of the lands but also looted numerous cultural treasures. The European colonists were particularly notorious for these actions. From ancient statues, sacred relics and epic manuscripts, these items were either stolen or taken away under shady circumstances. From 16th to 20th century, the Britishers went on a colonization spree, nation after nation, and stole almost 8 million artifacts. Yes, you have heard that right. And most prominent is India's Kohinoor diamond and decapitated dried Maori heads. The wealth of many of the rich Western nations has largely been built on the extraction of resources from the global south since the colonial era. This exploitation has created a systematic inequities and left these countries to bear the negative consequences. It is now time for these resources and artifacts to be returned to their original homes. The return of these bronze idols marks the steps towards justice, but countless artifacts remain displaced. Every artifact tells a story. These stories deserve to be told and told from where they began. Throughout history, countless cultural artifacts have been plundered during wars, colonization and illicit trade as well, which has resulted in ongoing disputes over their rightful ownership. Regions from Asia and Africa to South America have all fallen prey to the looting of their cultural treasures. The Kohinoor, meaning mountain of light, is one of the world's largest cut diamonds. After the British annexation of India in 1849, the diamond was given to Queen Victoria as a gift. It is now part of British crown jewels on display at the Towers of London's Jewel House. But from where this gift was given and who was the owner of this Kohinoor diamond has not been taken into account. Similarly, the Tipu's tiger, a nearly life-size wooden automaton depicting a tiger mauling a British soldier, was created for Tipu Sultan of Mysore. However, it was captured by the British forces in 1799 after Tipu's defeat. It is now displayed at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. There are several such instances of such priceless artifacts and antiques being stolen or being looted and being kept at the museums in Americas and Europe. Located in modern-day Nigeria, Benin bronzes were looted in 1897, about 150 years back, when British troops invaded the Benin Empire. 2 of the many pieces have been returned, while the rest being on display in American and European museums. Acquired by Germany in 1913 from Egypt, the Nefertiti bust and Rosetta Stone, this 3,400-year-old statue remains a major attraction at the Berlin's Neues Museum. During the 1868 British expedition to Magdala, numerous Ethiopian cultural treasures, including manuscripts and a golden crown, were looted as well. These items are now scattered across British institutions. Cambodian artifacts were widely looted as well, often trafficked by dealers. Many have been recovered, while some still awaiting to be returned. In 2003, as soon as 20 years back, during the Iraq War, thousands of artifacts were stolen from the National Museum of Iraq. The looting represents a devastating loss to Iraq's cultural heritage. And the list goes on and on. These cases underscore the complex, contentious nature of cultural heritage, sparking heated debates over rightful ownership and the repatriation of artifacts that have been taken during historic conflicts and colonial periods. With every artifact returned, we take a step towards justice and honoring the rich histories and cultures from which they were taken. The time for restitution is now, and the demands for restitution of these historical artifacts and antiques growing, and the world must listen to the voice of reason and the voice of the global south. The giant African snail is highly sought after in many parts of the world for both its nutritional benefits and its use in cosmetics. But in Ghana, the edible snail species is gradually facing extinction. Farmers are now prioritizing snail farming to keep the industry alive. DD India's correspondent Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Emmanuel Chene started breeding giant African snails in this greenhouse 5 years ago. It was mainly to provide an alternative source of protein for local consumption.
We have limited protein sources. It is just about meat, fish or egg, and that's it. And then I also realized that snails and then other source of proteins which used to be there in the olden days with time are getting fade out.
In Ghana, snails usually breed in natural environments that are marshy and wet, but the edible snail species have faced extinction over time due to variations in weather patterns and intense dry spells linked to climate change. So farmers are investing in other technologies like the greenhouse to help the production of the local delicacy. It takes between 4 to 6 months for the snails to mature after their eggs are hatched. People come to this market to buy snails mainly to use it in preparing different types of dishes. Some add the snails to soups and sauces, while others just fry and eat them. Mamiya sells these snails at $8 for 5.
People like snails because they are very nutritious and healthy. But these days, we do not get the quantities we need from the farmers.
Beyond its nutritional benefits, the shells of snails can be crushed and used as poultry feed, while the mucus is used for cosmetic products. The global snail value chain business is worth more than $2 billion.
If we're able to produce a ton of snail slime every month, it means a lot of money, and this is going to boost our economy. This is going to increase employment. It's going to increase even our GDP. Is going to ensure that we have a lot of foreign exchange coming in and all that.
Even though his business has been sluggish lately due to lack of funds, Emmanuel Chene hopes to scale up production of his snails soon in order to tap into the export market. Nabil Ahmed Rufai in Accra, Ghana, reporting for DD India.
This is all we have for you in this edition of Voice of the Global South. Let us know your thoughts on the show. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The application is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. You can also connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching our special program. News and updates continue on DD India. Keep watching.